that it?
Mhm. And then this is, you're muted. All
right.
Do you want to unmute?
No. So are you going to be here for a while?
I'll wait.
All right. Morning.
Good morning. Melissa, I might switch to my phone later. I have a doctor's appointment at 9, depending on how long this thing takes.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I'll probably request another. We'll see.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Tom.
How's everybody this morning?
I'm quarantining.
Quarantining.
I was with someone over the weekend that tested positive on Tuesday. So I went and got a rapid test yesterday and I'm negative, but I'm still technically supposed to quarantine now for 10 days. So
Oh boy.
I'm waiting for the weekend that I'm going to sneak into the office for a couple hours when nobody's there and quarantine in my office until next week.
There you go. Yeah. Well,
I made a list of things. I made a list of things I want to do around the house, and I finished that by 11 o'clock yesterday morning.
Yeah, I hear you.
Creating the list was probably enough for you.
Well, it took a while to do that. I might make another one today. That'll take a little time.
Have your wife make a list for you, Keith.
Yeah, no. Actually, she's going to go to her office. She was home yesterday working from home, but she's going to go to her office because according to the guidelines, even though I was exposed firsthand, she wasn't. So she was secondhand exposed to someone with a negative test. So she doesn't have to quarantine. All these rules are crazy.
Yeah, you better believe it.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Wilhelm.
Morning, all.
Morning.
Morning, Pat.
Hey, Melissa,
Yes.
I got your email. Thank you. Next Thursday would be great.
Okay, sounds great.
Just let me know what time.
Okay,
Thanks.
awesome, sure.
Did anybody get the vaccine yet? Have you?
Yeah, we got it
Anybody?
last Saturday over at Reading Pediatrics.
I just, my right shoulder, I mean, that thing hurt for 2 days till
And mine, yes.
that felt like somebody hit me with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, Vicky had no problems at all with even soreness, but yeah, my arm hurt for about 2 days at the injection site.
Yeah, I just, well, the nurse that gave it to me really went right up into the rotator cuff almost.
Yeah.
Wow. You feel, what are you trying to do here?
Bill Vicky's just a little tougher.
In more ways than one.
Yeah. Touche, Bill.
She got home from work last night at midnight.
I hope you
Here,
had
I thought
dinner
that was
ready
you.
for her. Have dinner ready for her in her slippers.
Well, I had
Good morning,
dinner.
John.
I had dinner done and then I put it in the refrigerator and I went to bed.
Can't hate you for that.
Give everybody another minute, then we'll go.
Good morning.
Ethan, are you actually at home today?
I am.
I was going to say, so you finally learned how to use this thing from
No,
home.
Tyra had to hook it up for me. She left it to do it for me.
God bless her.
Okay. Well, it's time to start. So let's call the meeting to order. Melissa, would you like to do a roll call?
Keith Ster,
Here.
Tom Mull,
Here.
John Gallen,
Here.
Steve Brunner,
Here,
and Greg Portner.
Greg, turn your speaker on. We're here. Mute off. We can't hear you, Greg. Can you hear us? Bueller. Greg, can you hear us? It's not. Greg? Give him 30 seconds, then we'll move on. Can you hear us, Greg?
Can't hear you guys for some reason.
Now we hear you. Turn the volume up in case, of course, you can't hear me. That doesn't help you any. Okay, well, let's move forward. We are at public comment. Is there anybody out there who wishes to make any public comment? And please note that all comments should be subject to according to the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the Borough Committee, this committee, or the board conducting the virtual policy meeting, and shall be limited to this type of concern. So is there anybody out there that has any public comments?
Sure. I want to say a few words.
Go for it.
Something that seems it's starting to look like even a financial irregularity. I have looked a little bit recently into the matter of trash, and what happens, it appears
Still can't hear you guys.
you cannot, he still cannot hear us. Can I go on? I don't know.
He can go on. He can, if he gets this figured out, he can listen to it on tape.
So what happens is it looks like, I mean, more and more evidence points out to the fact that Mascaro is not recycling, despite what they claim. Then, I mean, I can go into the details, but the question at this point is, if that were the case, I'm wondering, why are we still employing two companies to do the same job of taking the trash to the dump? And then I can see that there's some irregularity again in asking for a recycling grant, since we're not recycling. I've tried to raise this at the trash committee. Mr. Jenks takes it very personal every time I'm trying to just ask a simple question, and that is, to me, it's very weird that he is so defensive, because I think it's everyone's concern if I mean, all the effort that the residents are doing to recycle and separate and everything ends up in the landfill. So there is more and more reports nationwide that this is what happens since China stopped taking plastics. And I mean, there is a whole discussion that we need to, personally, I'd like to know, because if that's the case, I can take metals to the place that recycles metals, instead of throwing them, giving them to Mascaro to just crush everything together and compact it and take it to the dump yard. So, so my question to you is, what are we doing to trace this thing, to audit the system? Are you just taking Pat's word on it? And by Pat, I mean Pat Mascaro. Or are we trying to do something more responsible? The committee on recycling and refuse doesn't seem to have any interest, doesn't know anything, doesn't want to know anything. So I don't know why they exist, to tell you the truth. But I guess that's it. I will inquire more. I'll put a right to know request, Melissa, on the application for the grant, and we'll go from there. But I just wanted to bring this to your attention, and I thank you this morning. Later on, I see you have an executive meeting. I'll be on my phone. I have a doctor's appointment. Thank you. Have a nice morning.
Thank you.
Steve, I never like to make these things go on any longer, but I don't miss many meetings. I have no idea what he's talking about. And I don't want to get into a debate, but is this an issue that I've been to all the meetings. I've never heard this before.
Yeah, I haven't either.
There is no issue at all. Mascaro sends a report to us monthly. They are currently doing 90% recycling.
Okay, I don't want to go on. I just,
Again, that is his word, sir. It's it's impossible that.
okay, I didn't want to debate it. I'm not debating. I just asked.
Well, then I don't know. You know, I have very good reason to suspect that he's just crushing everything, put it in the dump.
Okay, well, yeah,
and the
okay.
landfill. But we'll
Okay.
talk more. I'll keep
Phyllis,
you
moving
posted.
on.
Yes.
Everyone hear me properly?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, to start with the cash update. We ended the month of January with cash balances totaling $7,852,000. That is a decrease from the end of the year of $757,000. That's not unusual for the month of January. January is a month with no substantial tax receipts and expenditures that were deferred from the prior budget year into the new budget year. At the end of January, there were 2 pending grant reimbursements that we were waiting for. The Barwis Construction application number 3 has been paid in the amount of $155,000. At the end of January, that reimbursement had not yet been received. We are also awaiting reimbursement for engineering fees. Those engineering fees will be limited to 10% of the actual grant. So I'm not really sure when we will be receiving the engineering reimbursement. Michelle, would you have more to explain pertaining to the engineering reimbursement?
Colleen has all of the invoices that Phyllis put together, which clearly spell out what we were billed for McCarthy specific to costs for Forest Street. She then was kind enough to upload all of the canceled checks showing proof of payment. So Colleen has all that information. My understanding is she was waiting for the analyst from DCED to get back to her just to confirm what format they want to see it in, and then she's going to move ahead with submitting. So I would hope sometime in the next month.
Okay. So had those 2 reimbursements been received before the end of January, they would have totaled $354,000, and our cash balance would have been $8.2 million. The interest rates remain unchanged at just 0.1%, even less at Customers Bank. So I did research with VIST what rates would be available if we were to move to some type of CD as a strategy for investing our reserves. Melissa, do you have those rates? There we go. 3, 6, and 9 month terms would be at 0.2. Still obviously very low, but double what we're getting now. If we were to commit for a 12-month period, the rate would be 0.45. In the month of January, on reserves, which are approximately $6.4 million at the time, We earned just $544 in interest. So I'm throwing out to the committee any interest in moving any of our reserve money into CDs and tying it up for any length of time.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it's not a lot of dollars either way, but it certainly doesn't hurt to move it if it's just going to sit there anyway.
And how much would you recommend moving over?
Well,
you go over
currently-
as much as you want. Worst case is you lose some interest if you have to take it out.
Yeah, currently we have 4.6 sitting in what's termed a money market account. Is the interest rate is the same as the regular operating accounts. During the month of February, we'll continue to see a decrease in cash. Again, into the beginning of March until real estate tax receipts resume. I would be comfortable moving as much as 4 million of that we don't need to worry about liquidity, and we're covered in the event of any unusual circumstances.
And your length of time that you're recommending?
We could stagger it. We could get the better rate at 12 months. Of course, the interest isn't technically received until maturity, which will take us into the next calendar year. I'm open for suggestions. That's my comfort level as far as dollar amount and not having instant liquidity.
Well, if we're gonna do that, I think staggering it probably makes a little sense. I don't know, but anybody want to think about $2 million for 6 months and 2 million for 12? Or am I just being ultra conservative?
Here on the side of caution.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
That's good with me too.
Okay, I can proceed to contact VIST and have those documents drawn up. We'll go through the same signature process as we have with other new accounts. Chris is in the process of updating some resolutions to try to expedite those signatures. If I can get account numbers on those 2 CDs, now that we know the amounts and the terms, we might be able to incorporate those documents into the new resolutions that are being presented to council for next week's approval.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, do you have any comment to that?
No, I agree that that's the process.
And Chris, do we need any action right now?
No, well, we should have a motion to authorize the acquisition of those 2 CDs.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to acquire a 6-month CD for $2 million and a 12-month CD for $2 million. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Move forward. Thank you.
We move on to the fund balance recap. 2020 ended with an overall fund balance of 9.5 million. January's deficit of 848,000 decreased the overall fund balance to 8,651,000. Of that amount, 605 is reserved for future commitments. To review those commitments, the MS4 reserve was previously at 240,000. The budget plan was to increase that by 80,000 over the course of the year. So I've taken 1/12 of the 80,000 or 6,667 and added to the previous reserve. So we now have an MS4 commitment of $246,000. The previously reserved insurance proceeds for the police vehicle no longer appears. The car was received and paid for in January, so the reserve was applied against that payment. Reserve of 150,000 for Borough Hall renovation continues. The previously reserved 87,000 for street construction was paid for in January, so that reserve has been removed. Michelle had identified donations that were received as a result of the Fox Fest and donations for Wildways for future maintenance of the bike route and share stations. Those donations totaled $48,600. So that amount has been added to the reserves because this is for future maintenance. The amount of 160 for the sewer upgrades, The work has begun. We have not yet received a payment app, so there's been no payment, so that entire amount remains. So with 605,000 now in reserves, the fund balance overall is reduced to 8,045,000. If those same payment apps had been received at the end of January, we would have been adding the 354, bringing the unreserved fund balance potentially to 8.4 million.
So just a point of clarity, I believe I understand this, but for that bike route, the 48.6, that was donations that businesses gave, and Michelle, you can pop in who they were if you want to, for the ongoing process of that bike route, for the lining of the bike route. Is that right, Michelle?
So remember when we originally were applying for these two grants, there's the PennDOT grant, there's the DCED grant. PennDOT requires a match, DCED does not. So the idea was I would go out and approach local businesses to see if they would buy in towards cost specific to the bike route, and we could use that money towards our required 30% match. Lo and behold, we got full funding for the project through PennDOT from that separate $187,000 grant that they gave us. DCED covered the complete cost of 4th Street. So the money that was donated by those businesses is now being held in reserve for long-term maintenance and repair of the route. So if a sign gets knocked over, or the sharrows need to be repainted, or we want to extend the contract for the bike share stations, there's money sitting there to do so.
Okay, perfect. Questions?
Questions on reserves?
All right, moving forward.
We go on and compare the January results. You'll now see 3 years. The 19 information has been retained so that when we're comparing results, if something unusual occurred in 2020, as will be many of the remaining months, we have a more solid foundation for comparison. So you now see 19, 20, and 21. You'll see revenue overall is really substantially not different over the course of the 3 years. January of 20, we were not yet seeing the effects of the pandemic. Of course, in January is the only month where the monthly results and the year-to-date results are the same. That will change as we go forward. When you look at overall expenses, you can see again, significantly not different, 1.6 million each January. You'll see it's slightly trending upwards as you would expect to, as the personnel costs, of course, do increase from year to year contractually. If you go on to the next page, you can see the net results, not significantly different over the course of the 3 years. Any specific questions or concerns?
No.
No? Okay. We go on and look specifically at revenues. If we look at net real estate tax collections, received in January, those receipts are limited to payments that were postmarked by December 31st of the prior year, but not received and processed by the tax collector until January of the next year. Not significantly different from year to year. When the year was closed out and all said and done, the total uncollected taxes turned over to the county in mid-January by the tax collector totaled $57,900. Just 68 bills not collected represents an actual 99% collection rate. Extraordinary given the circumstances of 2020. Okay.
So that 57.9 is money we expect in 2021, correct?
It could take longer than that. These are properties that could potentially go to sheriff's sale or free and clear sales. It could be collected over the next 2-3 years before the properties are actually taken over.
Do we have the ability to be able to track that, saying this is how much our delinquent taxes are over the last 2 or 3 years and where we stand on the collection of that number?
I actually don't have balances. I'm sure I could get that information from the county office. What we receive on a monthly basis is this is what's been collected. But I couldn't tell you the remaining balance from the preceding X number of years.
I think that this is just one person, and if anybody else doesn't agree with me, that's fine. But I wouldn't mind to see what our balances are, and it doesn't have to be for next month, but just sometime in the next couple of months.
Okay, I'll do some research with the county office. All right.
Okay.
We move on and just look at the other local taxes. Again, not significantly different over the course of the 3 years. You can see compared to 2020, when we did not have effect of the pandemic yet, we're looking at 116,000 versus 116,000. So really no significant difference. 1 point of reference, the sale of the Equus property that will be generating the real estate transfer tax. Michelle learned that there was some delays in electronically recording those documents. So we did not receive that amount in January. We'll look for it again in February. Michelle, do you have any new information there?
I do not, other than Equus is supposed to give me an update once they know that everything's been recorded.
Okay. Phyllis, after that comes in, we might want to consider keeping that not separate, but highlighting that in some way so we don't, because that's going to blow out the budget. It's going to make it look like a lot different. I'd maybe keep that highlighted in some way and only report without that.
I'll add a footnote to this report of the amount that was included.
Okay.
Okay, if we move on, this is a worksheet that we used when budgeting. As decisions were made as to what capital projects to keep, what capital projects to table. The bottom line in the approved budget is that capital projects totaled $4,494,000. I took that information, and Melissa, can you advance? All right, I took that information. These are the projects that were actually approved along with their budgeted amounts in the far right column. What I plan to do throughout the year is to keep this schedule going on a month-to-month basis so you can see the progress towards those projects. In the month of January, you can see that the police vehicle was paid for a total of $34,000. That was a vehicle that was previously damaged, was received and paid for with the insurance proceeds. The next line down, listed as major equipment, is the purchase of the license plate reader. That was not budgeted. It was entirely funded by a donation from the Wolves. So we did not anticipate the revenue nor the expense at the time we budgeted a wash to the bottom line, but I'm presenting it here as a capital purchase. The only other expenditure of a capital nature in the month of January were the payment of 2 Barwis applications, number 2 and 3, totaling $241,000. The items that are shaded in a peach color are items that if you look at the actual detail in the financial statements, those capital items are actually combined with routine items. So we want to be careful not to take the full amount of the budget line, but just specifically the detail of the capital items for this purpose. Does that make sense?
No, I don't understand that. Say that again.
If you look at the very first line, maintenance of borough buildings, account number 409-373. That is where the budget was for the addition of the Hills Salt Shed. However, other items of a more routine nature are in there. The cleaning of Borough Hall, the alarm fees, all those kinds of things are combined on that one budget line. So when you look at the financial detail, that number will be much higher, but only a portion of it will be of a capital nature.
But the $5,000 is just for the salt shed.
Yes.
Okay. So on this sheet, there's no intermixed expenses.
I've shaded them, so I'm careful to evaluate the detail before reporting. What you'll see on this sheet is just the capital item as compared to what was budgeted.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
It's the subline of the major category. Got it. Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
So for each of the capital items where there are contractors making payment applications that will be presented to infrastructure, I'll continue with the capital sheets. Melissa, if you could progress. Here's an update on the Barwis 4th Street extension, for example. In the month of January, payment was made on application number 2 and 3. Reimbursement for number 3 is still pending. We have received application number 4, which brings the project to approximately 33% complete. The payment app, which will be for $116,900, will be going before the infrastructure next committee.
Okay. And
Work has
just-
also started on the sewer project, but the first payment app has not yet been received. That will most
So-
likely be in February.
So I apologize. So I'm looking at this on the 4th Street extension, and I see the different payment apps. I see the grant reimbursement received or pending. Where do I see where we stand versus the budget on this thing?
If you would back up,
Hmm.
midway, the first line in peach,
Yep.
you can see the budget is 1,840,000
Okay.
and we've paid 241.
Okay.
Would you like a budget amount added to the individual project sheet?
Well, assuming that infrastructure is not going to see that page that you're on there at the peach lines, I
Okay,
think it'd be good to add the budget number on there, because when I'm at infrastructure and I don't have a finance hat on, I've always been curious as to where does this stand with the budget?
okay, I can add that.
Thank you. I mean,
Sure.
if I'm making work to make work, I apologize, but does anybody else agree with me or disagree with me?
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll add that to the
you.
individual project lines or sheets. Okay, just a quick audit update. There's 3 ongoing audits. Melissa, if you can move on to the next page. There's 3 pending audits underway. The pension audit is nearing conclusion. There's 1 issue to resolve. The Herbine audit is scheduled to begin on next Monday. The workers' comp audit, they have all the information. The gentleman just rescheduled the exit interview. So that's all I have on the audit front.
Phyllis, if I may, when are we scheduled again to hear the pension guys at the finance committee? Is that coming up or?
I don't
anytime
have,
soon?
yeah, I won't have valuations for year end for a couple weeks. This is an extremely busy time for Gerard. January 1st of 2021 is evaluation date. I haven't even received the surveys to gather that information yet. But it is evaluation date, but that information will be months before it's received.
And we didn't see any huge dips in December, so that helped.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right. All right, so I think there are some other items of business. Melissa, do you want to take that?
Yeah, Melissa, can you put the, I got too many screens going. Can you put the agenda back up for me? Thanks. All right. So we've been, well, I'll let either Phyllis or Michelle discuss the cyber insurance policy, but bottom line is we have a $1 million cyber insurance policy rider on our plan, and I'll let Michelle and or Phyllis discuss that.
So Melissa, Darren Anders, and I had a lengthy review back in end of November, beginning of December as to security protocols for the borough server, all of the computers that are hooked into it, the information that we're storing on that server. After that conversation, Lynx put me in touch with someone they work with who is basically a cyber insurance guru. He reviewed the current policy that we have with Travelers, which has a $1 million limit per claim and $1 million maximum coverage with a $10,000 deductible. Based off the type of information that is saved on our servers, such as social security numbers or driver's license numbers, because keep in mind, the police department is on that server as well. If we would have any type of breach, we would need to do breach notification, credit monitoring, and a whole host of other things that they felt we would quickly blow through that $1 million coverage very quickly. Any claim received in the year beyond that, we would be out of pocket for the costs. So their minimum recommendation was that we consider upping the policy from 1 million to 2 million. I reached back out to Loomis and got an updated quote from Travelers. The total term premium is $11,206, which is roughly $3,200 more than our current $1 million policy. So the Finance Committee and Council would need to approve the additional expenditure of approximately $3,200 for the coverage.
Phyllis, could I just ask a question? Sorry, Steve. What is the expiration date of the policies that we have? Are they all different, or are they?
No, they're calendar year.
All right. When was the last time we reviewed our insurances and put these out for bid and all that kind of stuff?
Marty would have done that.
All right, so it's been a little while.
Yeah.
My thought on this would be that I think sometime between now and then, whenever, we look at this and we put it out for bid and see what other companies, insurers have to offer, and look at premiums. I mean, right now, you know, Steve, you're in the business. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and perhaps we could get better coverage for less from a good company. I mean,
Loomis does perform that for us. They look at different carriers when they come back with a package for recommendation.
Sure. No, what I'm saying is look at another broker, see what they have to offer.
Well, yeah, that we can discuss that at future meetings. It's a 1/1 effective date. If you're going to do that.
No, sure. We missed it for this year, but
no, yeah. I mean, we'd be doing that in July or somewhere along those lines.
Right.
But,
I mean, that's just a thought when we're discussing premiums and stuff like that. And
I totally agree with Greg. I think you become complacent at times. And I know in my business's world, I've had several cases where I waited too long to take a fresh look at it.
Yeah.
In this particular case for the cyber policy, I actually did request quotes from other carriers from the gentleman that I talked to that is the cyber insurance guru. He was able to provide quotes that were lower, but they were with companies that we were unfamiliar with, and I couldn't find a lot of background information on. So in this particular case, after Pat and I discussed it, you know, we both felt more confident sticking with Travelers, at least for this short-term period, knowing Steve and I had the conversation about the same thing, you know, at the end of this year, looking at maybe getting updated quotes from other brokers.
That's fine. I just wanted to throw that out on the table. That's all.
I have two things to speak about that. First of all, one of the benefits you get with this, and I am in the insurance business, but I'm not in the property and casualty insurance business. It's like asking a plumber to do electricity. I have an idea where stuff goes, but I may electrocute myself. But at the end of the day, one thing that another broker would look at is just another set of eyes to see if they think the policies are set up correctly. That's one thing. But the other thing I wanted to mention is I did go to our group at my office, and I asked them, and Michelle confirmed this morning, as late as this morning before the meeting, that we do have an umbrella policy, but the umbrella policy does not cover cyber breaches. And then to top it all off, I found out yesterday through our office up in New York, that a government agency, let's just leave it at that, up in the New York area, had a cyber breach and is in well over $1.5 million worth of claims so far. I was all about to say no to this, but for $3,200, I think we're putting a little money, taxpayer money down to be able to give us a little bit more wiggle room. And the more I see this cyber stuff popping up, the more it scares me. So for $3,200, I think it's probably a pretty good deal, with the intention of reviewing the whole thing next year. But I'll be willing to listen to anybody else's opinion on that.
I mean, I didn't need to start a 15-minute diversion here, sidebar, but I just wanted to put that out on the table just so we start thinking about it.
Well, the reason we're talking about it is because we're adding $1 million of coverage, but it's also adding $3,200 to an unbudgeted number.
Right.
Well, I agree with you, Steve, because there have been several cases where some of the cyber raiders will grab a hold of your servers and won't let it go unless you pay a ransom.
Right.
And they can destroy your records. It's amazing, but I think it's money well spent.
I should
Yeah,
have
there's-
bought Bitcoin stock when it was $1.
Tom, to kind of add to what you just said, the other, wrinkle with our current policy is if we would have to pay a ransom, like there's no difference between what would come out for ransom versus what would come out for breach notification or credit monitoring. So if we got hacked and, they asked for $1 million in ransom to release the server, that's all our policy is paying. Everything else is now out of pocket. So, at least increasing it to 2 million, you'd have money there for the ransom plus for any breach on top of that.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. The only other comment that I have is on the broker, with what Greg Portner was talking about was many years ago, when I first came on council, one of the first things that we did was to look at our insurance policies. And the first time around where we looked for another broker, we saved the borough over $50,000 in 1 year by looking for another broker. That was supposed to happen like every 3 years. We used to go and take a look around and keeps them honest. At least they're trying to give us a better deal. So that's not a bad thing at all.
Steve, I agree with you. I agree with you that we should increase the insurance policy. But at the same time, are we making sure that what we have in place to protect us from having a problem in the first place is sufficient? Are we making sure that we've got everything covered up front? I think that's just as important as the insurance piece. Make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, so I had a lengthy conversation with the gentleman that's the cyber guru, and he gave me a whole list of things we can do, such as taking information off the server, storing it elsewhere. I had a follow-up conversation with Lynx about some further encryption we can do on the server. Some of that is timely in that just thinking of the F drive and the information we save on there, which is like our public drive everyone has access to, it would be going through every file and determining what stays, what can be pulled off and saved, on a hard drive in the fire safe. But that's something we can start going through and doing to reduce the risk if we do get hacked, what's out there and where the breach would be.
Did they make any recommendations to keep the police off the same server?
Not at this time. And I believe the police are somewhat on a different server. Like the drives that administration has access to are not the same drives the police department has access to, and vice versa. The police department, though, also logs in, my understanding is remotely, to other national and statewide databases that admin, for obvious reasons, does not have access to. So there's a whole other level of encryption there. Borough admin staff, when we log in remotely, we started within the past, I'm going to say 10 months, using two-factor identification. So it's not just you log in with your password. There's now a password you have to pull off your cell phone that's linked to your account. That there's that two-factor authorization before you can just get into your desktop. So there are steps that are either have been taken or will continue to be taken to further protect the server and the information on there.
Okay. All right, moving on. So I guess we need to make a recommendation to pay the extra $3,200 and change to increase the cyber insurance policy from $1 million to $2 million. I'll make that recommendation, or I'll make that motion. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Go ahead, Michelle, and Phyllis, go ahead. Increase it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna keep punning. I'll let you talk about the Aeroclave sanitization system.
Sure. So some of you were at the infrastructure meeting a few weeks ago. I presented information on the Aeroclave, which is a sanitation and decontamination system that Western Berks uses. Western Berks Ambulance allowed us to borrow one of their units that we use to sanitize Borough Hall and the Public Works Maintenance Garage roughly a month ago. Tony Tucci from Western Berks gave me contact information for the company. I requested a quote for the same system that they have. which also includes a hand sprayer, which allows you to sanitize a much larger area in a shorter period of time, a case of the disinfectant solution, and shipping. Total cost is $15,743. Obviously, this is not a budgeted expense. The thought was if we purchased it, it would be stored at the police department. Chris Sam would be responsible for general maintenance of it, but then one of the parks employees, Kent Robinson, could take it on a weekly basis. We'd put it on a schedule. So, say Borough Hall and the police department Monday, fire department Tuesday, public works garage, tree department, and parks barn, the next day. We could use it in the police vehicles, the fire trucks, as well as if and when we ever get back to somewhat normal times and start running out our rec facilities like the Stone House, we could use it there. We could use it, in any bathroom facilities like at Happy Hollow or the playground. So I think we would get a good amount of use out of it, and we could use it for things other than just COVID. I mean, even for, general flu, sanitize the office during flu season to keep down on illnesses and employee timeout.
Soon we'd let the library use it too.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay. So to put some background, this went to infrastructure. Infrastructure said they like the idea, even though it's an unbudgeted item, and moved it forward to finance. So here we are. I've thought about it, and just again, my opinion, and I'm not a big fan of doing unbudgeted things, but in today's society and who knows what's going to be happening moving forward, I think this is a pretty good investment for all the different things we can use. I assume we can spray the police cars with this. Would this work in cars? Does it hurt the electronics in the cars, Michelle?
No, you can use it in a car. In fact, in that one video demonstration, they showed it being used in a vehicle.
Yeah, I didn't do any video demonstrations. So anybody have any questions, other questions? I won't sit here and have this debate. We'll just run it up to a vote and see what happens. So I'll make the recommendation that we buy the Aeroclave system for that amount right there, 15,007. I can't read it, 743.80. And I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Greg?
No, I said aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, ayes have it.
Do I like it? No.
I get it. I'm in the same boat.
I'm in your camp.
All right, moving forward, then go ahead and buy that, Michelle. Now that we did it, the sooner the better, probably.
Thank you. I mean, you don't want me to wait until council to formally approve it?
Tom?
Go ahead and do it.
Okay, thank you.
Steve will pay for it if they put it down.
Yeah, they'll charge more another week.
Yeah.
And then Phyllis, you want to talk about electronic vendor payments?
Yeah, I have growing concerns about postal delivery. Not only are there borough invoices arriving late, creating some late payment issues, the payments that we are making are not arriving at the vendors in a timely manner. So we're incurring late fees. Just in the month of January, we had a problem with our down payment on our travelers insurance policies. A large group of UGI gas payments were delayed in the mail. I could go on and on. To date, the only electronic payments the borough has been making has been to vendors that are already approved as routine in the budget, such as payments to the library for operating support, payments to Spring Township for fire management, and reimbursement to employees. What I'm proposing is that we expand our electronic payments to include vendors so that we can get certain vendors paid in a more timely manner and avoid late fees. The only change to the weekly processing of invoices during the payable process is that we would produce a report listing all the payments that we would be making electronically. We'd have to check signers to approve that report, and then we would send the ACH file to the bank. So it's just a little bit of change to our current processing system.
So you're talking about people or companies like UGI, Comcast, that kind of stuff?
Yes, that we would make specific arrangements, get their payment information, and load that into the VIS bank system and initiate the ACH with a direct deposit.
I see, absolutely. Go ahead, Keith.
Phyllis, do you use the Business Bill Pay?
No, we do not.
I mean, that's really easy to use, and that does it. You don't need to do an ACH then. They do it for you electronically.
We don't do individual ACHs. Each check run produces an ACH file, which we just upload to the bank, and then it's processed overnight.
And then how did the vendor get their checks?
They don't get checks.
They get electronically.
Yes.
You might want to just look at Ask Vista about there. It's real easy, and it does it. You don't need to do. You just push a button, one button, and it's done for every vendor.
So you initiate individual payments.
Yeah.
In this case, we could upload a file that would pay 20 vendors.
Okay. Well, I'm just.
Yeah.
And Keith, I know what you're talking about. That makes sense. But if we can do it 20 at a time, it's better than one at a time.
Yeah.
I absolutely see. Can you produce the list for us? But I see no reason of what vendors you're making a recommendation for. I see no reason not to do it, as long as we still have some kind of oversight over it, because we have that obligation to the taxpayer.
Sure. It would just be a matter of timing, in that we would produce the report that would create the file. We just wouldn't manually send the file to the bank until after the signers have approved the list.
And that may save on our workers' comp for people who have to sign all these checks. They won't get carpal tunnel as fast.
That's possible.
All right. I'm all in favor of using electronic vendor payments. I have no problems with that. Does anybody have any issues with that? Do we need to make a recommendation for that, Chris?
Yes, there should be a recommendation. And what we might want to do is either to have a specific list that is approved for the electronic payment, or a resolution with a policy. If we could do a list, I'd prefer to do it that way. It's more controlled.
All right. So is there a way to make this motion so that we can have her produce the list once it gets past maybe Pat Brandenburg, it's approved?
And this is really a case-by-case basis, because we'll need to reach out to each individual vendor and have them provide us with their banking information.
All right. Well, then can you produce a list for next month's meeting, and then we'll make the approval for then?
I can do that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I'm all in favor of Phyllis. We just got to make sure we know which ones we're doing.
Gotcha.
I just want to make sure there's oversight. No offense, Phyllis, but I mean, anyone. Right now we have check signers. They sign checks. They can look at vouchers. They can question them before the checks go out. I just want to make sure we still have that ability for whatever reason.
As I said, each weekly check run would produce a report saying, these are the vendors that are being paid electronically.
That's fine.
And what we would do is require the signer to approve that list before the ACH file is actually sent to the bank for processing.
That's
I'm
fine.
good with that.
Yep, sounds good.
I agree.
Okay.
And I'll second that, Steve, if you're looking for
Well, all we're going to do is wait for next month to get the list of the vendors.
all right, that's fine.
Steve, if I may, Phyllis, question.
Sure.
Where we've incurred late fees, have the vendors waived those fees?
Well, I can give you a case-by-case basis. With Travelers Insurance, they wanted to cancel the policies, but other customers are experiencing the same problems. So Loomis acted on our behalf and waived any kind of fees. In the case of the borough's Visa credit card, I made a payment, a call to customer service and asked that the fees be waived. Sue's been in contact with UGI to say, hey, that this payment has been made. And when it was finally received and posted and I could see the bank activity, we called and made sure it was properly applied to the correct accounts. So it's really a case-by-case basis. Have we been late in the past, which of course we haven't been. In most cases, vendors are reasonable, but we are looking at a potential where in December, we've had to stop payment on a check and reissue the check because it just never arrived.
Right.
Okay.
It's 2021. It's time to move forward with the electronic payments, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would think whoever vendors that we have history with, they would go ahead and waive it. I mean, this is, an issue that's going on with every company. And I know it's driving my wife crazy too with her company. She just says, picks the phone up and says, I need this waived. And they say, okay.
Yeah, it requires a call, but
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it can be done,
Okay, thank you.
certainly.
Thanks.
The next thing on the, are you good, Phyllis?
I'm good.
Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is an executive session. We'll move to that executive session, and Melissa, will you let any guests know how long do you think we're going to be? 15 minutes?
What is the subject of that executive session?
Subject is collective bargaining agreements.
Okay.
Okay. Do we think 15 minutes is enough, Pat?
Might take a little longer.
Okay. That's what everybody wanted to hear. All right. Half hour?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Off the executive committee meeting.
Keith, you did it.
You did it.
I'm
Now an
proud of you.
You're now an official Mac user.
There's just, it's amazing how much different they are. And
God, they're so much better.
really,
Oh,
See,
you
I-
used to a Mac. Oh man, they want to tell you something. I had Dells and I've had Mac, and Mac is far better.
my wife doesn't know how to use my PC either. She doesn't know how to
Oh,
use
I-
my stuff.
I wouldn't want to sit down and use a Dell anymore.
Sorry, I was at my parents' house yesterday. I realized they have a 13-year-old gateway.
That's ready for the Smithsonian.
Oh, my God. All right, do we have everybody here? Do we need to do a roll call again to verify that, Melissa?
Sure, I can do that. Keith Durr,
Here,
Tom Mull,
Here,
John Gallen,
Here.
Steve Brunner,
Here.
and Greg Portner.
Here,
Okay, we just completed an executive session to discuss collective bargaining agreements. Is there anything else for the good of the committee? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a recommendation to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
Thanks, everybody, for your time.
see it.
Have a good day, guys.
Yep.